Start off with just going towards the checklist. Here we go. So we went ahead and made a bunch of different ones just so that they're altered to that particular transaction, because not everything for a new build is going to be for a residential and things like that, right? For example, if you're dealing with a new build, sometimes the survey is not given until closing, which we highly recommend that you upload that after closing, right? But you'll still get your CDA as long as you're compliant with all your other documents. You'll also have like new construction. Typically new construction with buyers, you'll have the builder's contract, and we understand that sometimes they already have certain addendums attached to that contract. So that one particularly doesn't have very many things. If for some reason it's on a TREC form, which it does happen, you can always add those extra addendums into the additional contract documents, right? I will share with you how you can create a placeholder for any document that's not listed. Let's say, for instance, to shorten it, the lender appraisal addendum. It's not common, but when it's used, definitely want to have it in its own placeholder, right? So we'll go into creating a transaction. 1, 2, 3. We all use Main Street, and then we'll put test. So I'll delete it afterwards. We're going to say it's 500,000. Typically, right, when you're creating a transaction, you don't know the close date, because we would love for you guys to submit before you're under contract, right? If you're dealing with a buyer, it's after option period would be the ideal time. And then if you're dealing with the listing, once the listing is live, get your listing docs approved. The last thing you want to do is a week before closing, and I'm like, hey, you got to fix something from all the way from the beginning. And then, unfortunately, you'll have sellers that will think you're an incompetent agent, because you have to go back and get all these signatures and corrections done, right? And so that, in turn, you might not think it's important, but it is important, because you're going to want to ask for those referrals, and they're not going to want to refer you if they feel like you're not a competent agent. Okay, but let's just hypothetically say you have an acceptance date or a closing date. Please add that. If this is a listing, please add the listing date and the expiration date. That's all the information you can add in here is very important. We will consider this, usually all of it's a traditional sale. We're going to go with a listing, but we'll go with pre-listing because it's not under contract yet, right? If you want to add more information, definitely down here. You can also pull from the MLS, but I'm manually entering this. This is where a lot of people get confused. And this is going to be a lot of information. You might want to write it down. For all transactions, the total gross commission is what's coming to Next Gen. Okay? So that is all transactions. The only one that's different, let me just give you the exception. The only one that's different is if you represent the landlord. Because the landlord, you were getting all the commission, including the other agent's commission. So that is going to be, if it's just any other sale, it's either 3% or 50% if it's a lease, right? But if you represent the landlord, only the landlord, then it's going to be 100%. Okay? So then when you get to the list side or buy side, whatever side you represent, that's where you'll hit select. We're listing, so we'll say save, right? That's how we know what agent is from where. You can add yourself right here, add agent. And then typically, I'll have to ask, it has the commission plan. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. I auto-correct it anyway when I'm creating CDAs. So that is why it's super important to add commission notes, and I'll explain that when we get there. So then once here, you don't have to mess with any of these numbers. Those numbers you can just leave like that, okay? can hit next.
Wait, can you go back really quick? I'm so sorry. So the first one, you put 100%, or I'm sorry, 100% for landlord, but generally 6% or?
No, 3%.
3%.
Okay, 3%.
The only time you put the full amount that's coming to Next Gen is a landlord.
So 3% for the listing agreement and then 50% for tenant.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But it's already like known that it's gonna be a 6% commission if you get the listing? It's already assumed.
No, so I know what you're saying. All right, so you, on your listing agreement, you're gonna put 6% because that's your agreement between the seller. Okay, so the seller knows, I'm gonna pay you 3% to list, I'm gonna pay the buyer's agent 3% to purchase for their buyer, right? But on here, you're not getting a full 6%, you're getting 3%, so that's why you would put 3%, not 6.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
But I will also add to add to that, if your seller agrees to pay 7% and you get 4% and the buyer's agent gets 3%, then more power to you. I have seen agents do it.
Right.
Okay, so I would encourage it. Know your worth. Okay, and then here in contacts, I highly recommend you add your, God bless you, your client. The title company, Cynthia would love you if you could please add your title company once you know who they are, name, email address, and phone number. And then anyone else that's pertinent to the contract. Okay, create. We'll go here to the checklist on the side, hit add. Right here in this teal color, a lot of people forget, that's where you'll have all your different checklists, okay? We'll go with just a residential listing. Now, we'll say about 90% of these documents will apply. If they don't apply, you don't even have to mark it exempt. You don't have to do anything with it. Just leave it alone, okay? Whatever you need to use, go ahead and use. We've created it to where it's easy to upload right here on the side if you need to just upload 1 or 2 documents. But I want to show you an easy way to do it. You'll hit documents, you'll hit unsorted, and then you could click add document, upload file. And then you can pull, yes ma'am,
Go back, yeah.
okay.
That's
All right, so this is like, once you create it, this is what it looks like, right? And so you'll go into, under assets, you'll go to documents. And then once you click documents, you'll see unsorted. And then you can do one of 2 things. If you can see your desktop, you can grab as many documents as that you want to add in here and drag them in here, which is the easiest thing to do. But in this case, I don't have that option, so I will just, let's say, I don't know. Oh, how come it's not letting me? Well, then this one's just gonna let you one at a time, I guess.
Do you usually use Windows or you use the Mac?
What do you mean?
Do you usually use Windows?
Windows.
Like do you use an Apple computer or do you use?
Yes, this is, yeah. And so let's just say hypothetically, I have 10 documents in here, right? I put them all in there. Then you can hit assign. These placeholders are the ones that are in the checklist. And you can just say, hey, this one's the amendment. Hey, this one's the listing agreement. Hey, this one's the IABS. And it goes like that. It's way faster than if you're in the checklist and you upload one by one. Okay? So this is way faster and easier. Now, let's say this document is 10 page, the contract and the third-party financing addendum. You'll hit edit. Ooh.
You need to upload one that has multiple documents.
Yeah, because this one's one
Yep.
page.
Yep.
Gotcha. Upload file.
Just gonna show you guys how to split up a contract now.
Well, I think this one has more than one page. You're uploading all kinds of stuff. Okay. There you go. And you'll hit split. Okay? And then it will be a little bit tedious, but it would allow you to split. And this is important because if you give me a contract with like the contract, third-party financing, non-realty, HOA, I'm gonna put on there only approving contract or whatever it is that that placeholder is for. That's to let you know that each document has to have their placeholder, because I'm not gonna go on a scavenger hunt to go look for something like, oh, does she have this? Does she not have this? Or, so everything needs to be on a placeholder. So you'll just do page 1 through 11, which is a contract, and then you can name it. And once you split it, let's just do 2, 12 to 15. Well, if I could type. And then like if the name is similar to something that's on the contract, you can put it and then automatically put it in there for you. So that even eliminates a step of having to assign it. So once it's assigned, it will take it out of unsorted and it should add it to the checklist, like right here. Like I didn't even do that. It did it on its own when I split it, right? Did everybody catch that one? Okay, cool beans. If for some reason, oh man, that's not the MLS. I uploaded the wrong file to the wrong placeholder. Not a big deal. Just come to the side over here, hit unassign, and it will automatically throw that document into the unsorted again. So you can go back. And that's what the preview, this gray section over here, that's what that's for. So you can preview what document is in there. Okay. A couple of other little tidbits. If you need to exempt something, let's just say the survey, because they decided like, hey, they don't want the survey. Definitely we need an amendment for that if it's in the contract. And then if you want to do an exemption, say, hey, they decided not to get a survey, I'm going to upload the amendment. I don't believe that you guys can delete or any of these placeholders. It's usually for staff. I will share with you, going back to unsorted, again, if there's for some reason a placeholder that is not available, you'll hit assign and you'll go all the way to the bottom. All the way to the bottom it says create new. That is when you can create your own placeholder. Okay? All right. Let's see. Any questions so far?
I was really doing my best to do documents, to put all of my things in there. But when I got to certain places, there was no submit button. So the only thing I could hit was X. And then it would take me back to the home screen. And then I would go back in to say create and then X. And so I got really frustrated and I called the broker mint company. Mm-hmm. And the guy kind of walked me through. But when I went to put in the gross income, I didn't know what to put. I didn't know, so I put 3%. Mm-hmm. And then when I got to title, it wouldn't let me add the title company's name in there. The word title was stuck. Maybe it was because I was trying to do it on my telephone. I don't know. Maybe the mobile app is very difficult. Mm-hmm. And you may have to do it from a computer or a desktop. So, but very frustrating.
So when you want to submit, you hit the action button. Let's pause for a second so I can assign this to something. Okay, assign it to that, assign it to that, assign it to this. All right. So then here where it says uploaded, that's how you know, hey, it's in there. And if you're like, I just want to make sure it's the right document, click it and it'll pull it up on here on the side. But it only show you one page. So if you click on it again, it'll pull it up and then you'll get to see everything. Okay? So you can either, if you, let's say, for instance, added all 10 documents and you're ready to submit for review, you hit action and submit for review. Okay? Let's say you already submitted for review and you only have one document that needs to be reviewed because it was rejected or for whatever reason. You click on it and by itself you can hit submit. Okay? I will say, if you intend on exempting something, do not exempt it until you're submitting for review. The reason being is when you exempt something, it automatically sends it to me to be reviewed. So I'm reviewing 2 or 3 forms that are blank and I go check the checklist and it's completely blank. And I'm like, well, I can't approve it because I don't see anything else, right? I'll leave my notes. So I would say if you're going to exempt anything, wait until you submit everything. So it comes to me all at once. But thank you for that question. And I will say, so like I spoke about earlier, right here where it says commission notes, very important. Right here on the side, you just click and you just start typing away, right? So all I need to know is if you yourself is giving a concession to the buyer or the seller or whoever your client is. I don't need to know if the seller is giving the buyer something or anything like that because that's not going to go on your CDA. We do need to know if there's a referral, if there's an outside referral, meaning it is not another next gen agent. We do need a referral form and the W-9. That's when you'd create a placeholder for those particular documents. If it's an inside next gen person, then just tell me what the percentage is and then we'll make sure we get that onto the CDA. Any agent bonuses and things like that. I will share with you, I have a lot of questions when we're asked about, it's not in this checklist, but it's on the buyer's checklist about, let me see if I can take y'all there. On the buyer's checklist, there is a section that says buyer contribution letter. And so it will say use forms. This form is there. It'll ask you for certain information. And this is a form that you can use to either give to the lender or to the title company. Because not everybody requires it, but some title company and lenders require it. Hey, I need a letter from your broker saying that you are going to give the buyer $2,000.
Just do this form every single time if you're gonna give a buyer contribution, because you need to protect yourself. Okay?
And then again, make sure you put in the commissions because I'm moving so fast that I go to the commissions. If I do not see anything, I'm going to only automatically think that the percentage is 3% and then that's it. I don't know anything about contributions. It might have been in an amendment, but I'm looking at the amendment to make sure check boxes are checked, the information is accurate, and it's executed and signed. I'm not sitting here writing notes on like, oh, they did this, they did that, because that would just be way too much, right? Another thing that I do want to share is, again, closing date, super important. Any additional information, super important. But the price. Let's say this is a listing. We listed it at $500,000. We got an executed offer. It's at $450,000. We're about to close. You need to update this price because this is the price that the CDA is generated from.
I'm guilty of it. I'm sure you guys have all been guilty of it.
So again, if there's nothing in the commissions and it's $500,000, I'm like, okay, $500,000, 3%. And then I get an email like, oh, the price is wrong, wrong because of the amendment. And so I'm like, okay, so just keep that in mind. I do want to talk about a few other things. Any questions so far?
So when a document is rejected because of one page, so say it's like a 13-page contract, and it's just one page, it needs an initial from, the buyer or the seller. Should I just take that one page and send it over to the other agent, or
That's up to you.
that's up to me?
Yeah.
What if the agent is not getting it initialed by their client? Let's say my client, they initialed it, because I think it was just the contact information. I'm getting used to making sure, the listing or the buyer's agent sends over to me. Let's say like that my client fills out that and they initial it, but then they're not getting it filled out, like that one initial that I did. Would I just submit what I have, or?
I would, and I would make a note to say, hey, I've tried, And I'll be very honest with you, even if you upload the emails showing that like, hey, I've tried to communicate with the agent, because you're really trying to protect yourself and show that you did your due diligence in trying to do your best and getting what you need. 9 times out of 10, and I'm not calling you out or anyone else, there are times that I'm getting contracts and I'm asking for this stuff, but the contract already closed a week. And so people are not going to want to go back and sign on something they've already closed on, which is why it's super important you want to do it before the file closes. Because before the file closes, you're pretty much going to get that, if you ask for it. But a few things on that and what I will share with you guys. Amendments are there for a reason. So all these initials, which are acceptable because the parties are acknowledging the update and the change, it's better to do it on an amendment because once you sign a contract or any addenda, it's a legal binding document, right? And so I've seen agents where like, hey, there's a checkbox missing, and they'll check it off and send it back to me. I'm like, hey, but where's the initials? I know it's super minor, super tedious, but it's super important that you get everybody's acknowledgement that you just altered a legal binding document. God forbid you go into a court of law, like they're gonna pay attention to that, right? And then it just depends on the judge and how they're feeling that day. Everything's up for interpretation, and that's the last thing that you want is for anything to be up for interpretation. That's why NAs are important on any lines that are blanks. Everything should be filled out. A lot of people leave, I believe it's section 6D. A lot of people put residential use and then leave the days blank, or put 3 days and leave the objections blank. Like that's super important, right? Because that becomes a liability. A specific thing that you can put in there is if someone wants a pool, okay, you can put pool, but be as specific as possible. They want a 30 by 40 pool. Well, if they can't have a 30 by 40 pool, then that gives them the opportunity to back away and still get their earnest money as far as the buyer's
Do you
concerned.
guys understand what she's talking about? Okay.
Cool beans. Thank you for asking that. But definitely want things done on an amendment instead of like all these initials everywhere, right? But I mean, will it be accepted? Yes. Amendments are better. Any other questions?
Okay, I have one more.
Go for
So
it.
with the referral, I know you mentioned about it. So with the referral, like our split is 80-20. If we have a referral with the next gen agent, is it 25% after the aid? Right? So after our split, right, then it will be 25% to the other agent if we have the we have the referral fee in place.
If you tell me that the referral is 25% for the next gen agent, the way it works is the allocation is you're 75 and they're 25. And that's off of the amount. It's off the top. It's not off of your amount. It's off of the top.
Oh, okay. And then their split applies and then my split applies.
Correct.
Okay. So same thing with someone that's outside of the brokerage as well. Like if I get a referral from a different state, so it's off the top.
It's off the top. It's off the top. And then whatever deal they have with their broker, whether they get splits cut or not. But typically if you have a referral in-house, that agent is still going to pay a split on it. And it goes towards their cap. So it's a good thing.
Okay.
Is there a way that we can allow agents to enter their own commission?
Oh, at the beginning, like when I showed.
Yeah, so, you've got your 3%, but let's say we've got a transaction coordinator, we have a referral, and so it starts to get really muddled if they're telling you in the commission notes. Is there a way of rubber sumo, and maybe this is something we talk about offline, to where agents could do it themselves rather than having to rely on you to do that to generate their CDA? You obviously approved the CDA, but, you know what I'm saying?
I don't know if they can. There might be because I've seen other transaction coordinators do it,
Yeah,
but they were putting it in the wrong spot and creating double work for me.
okay.
Yeah. So at this point for me, until we learn how to do that or we teach a class on it,
It'd be easier.
it'd be easier for me to do because I'd feel like it'd be double work. because it took me a while to learn where everything
Okay.
goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? No. Okay. All right. So I wanted to briefly touch on representation, disclosure, and intermediary. We'll start with intermediary. Does anybody know what intermediary is?
We're gonna do it in examples. So everybody understands the difference between intermediary and representation.
Yes. So intermediary is when there are two agents, and those two agents are from the same brokerage, which you're from NextGen and they're from NextGen. That is when you use the intermediary form. Intermediary forms is actually supposed to be given when you submit the offer.
Yes.
It has to be known to the other party that it's going to be an intermediary transaction if the contract is executed or the lease is
So
executed.
I'm the listing agent at 123 Main Street. Riley comes by with her buyer and she's like, oh my gosh, we want to make an offer. She's a NextGen agent. So we're in business together now. This is when she is giving me the offer, she would include this in her offer of the intermediary relationship notice. Everybody has to sign off on it, okay?
Mhm.
And it's really easy, I mean, it's self-explanatory. Seller or landlord, you have to put the buyer and the seller in there, both agents, brokerages. So it would say that would say NextGen, the date would be today.
Whoops.
Broker will appoint licensed associates, always put will, okay? Because to the owner is gonna be the list agent, that would be me, to the buyer, it would be Riley. And then keep scrolling, you won't need any other additional information, I always put NA in any blanks, always put NA, and then everybody signs it, okay? Any questions on that? Now, let's say that I'm a listing agent of a lease. And this happens a lot in lease situations where I'm a list agent. And guess what? Buyer comes unrepresented, tenant comes unrepresented, says, Jamie, I want to take a look at your lease listing at 123 Main Street. We get approval, we're rocking and rolling, they want the property, but I didn't represent them. I'm representing the seller only. So then pull up that representation disclosure, all right? That is when you sign that. Okay, so you're not doing a buyer tenant rep and a lease listing representation, all right? Don't do that. That's not allowed in Texas. You can't do that. Got it? So then you would fill out this representation disclosure. Okay, any questions on this form?
Does that also apply, you said in that example that it's for a lease, does it also apply for sale?
Yes, it would apply for sale too. Now, typically, I mean, that gets hairy when you get into the sales situation, and so maybe, you know, if you have a team lead or another agent that you trust, maybe do a flat rate for them to maybe look over the documentation. That's typically what I would do. If you're not a broker, I caution you of representing both sides. Okay, I caution you of doing this.
What would your flat fee be, do you think? Percentage or?
So typically, if I'm just looking over documentation, then I mean, I will do it for a percentage, a small percent, or just a flat rate of $500 or $1,000 or something. So, yeah, it just kind of depends on what agent you want to do it and how much control you want to give them.
And both sides need to know clearly that you represent the seller, right?
Yep. Yep.
So yes, and it's very important you use, I know, again, it sounds like it's not a big deal, but it is. The word facilitate is what you want to use to the party that you are not representing. I will facilitate this transaction. I will give you the documentations that is needed. I do not represent you, but I can for sure give you factual information, right? Let's just say it's the other way around. You're representing the buyer and you found a for sale by owner. Man, that's awesome, right? You're still using this form to tell the seller, hey, I represent the buyer, not you. But in that case, you'll also need an additional document that is called agreement between broker and owner. The reason you want that is because that is going to secure your commission.
Pull that, can you pull that one up so you can see that? Because a lot of times the sellers, if they're unrepresented and they're selling it on their own, they don't want to give commission, so you definitely have to have this filled out. And say, if you want me to sell your house, dude, you're gonna sign this disclosure saying you're gonna give me 3% or 2%, whatever you negotiate.
And aren't we supposed to say something like, we can only offer, I can't remember the verse word, something in opinions?
Facts and opinions. Yeah, I believe it's facts.
I don't even think you can give
I don't even
opinions.
think you can say opinions.
You can only give
You can only
factual
give
Cannot,
facts.
yes, cannot give an opinion,
Right.
just the facts.
Only facts.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
because your fiduciary duty is to your client,
Right.
whichever side that is.
Right.
yes.
Mhm.
The same facts that you would tell anybody out there that calls you and asks questions, you're gonna tell everybody involved.
And there is a deal where someone is doing this particular, but they didn't do the registration agreement between broker and owner because the buyer said they're going to pay their 3% commission.
Yeah.
In that case, it's factual information. You could put that in special provisions of the contract.
Right.
I would say before you do anything like that, because you still have to be very careful, you're not practicing law or putting any verbiage that shouldn't be in a contract. Definitely want to reach out to Jamie or Christy or Julia or myself to double check and make sure, like, hey, is this okay for me to do? Yeah, that's super important. Any questions on any other forms?
Ask now. It's good information.
So just to clarify, we cannot represent both the listing,
Correct.
the seller and the buyer.
Correct.
So if you, I don't want to say if, when someone is under the impression of that or speaks in that way, it's called dual agency. It is illegal in the state of Texas. So that is why it is very important, the verbiage that you use and say, I will facilitate. I don't represent you. You only represent your client.
I will facilitate and then assign it to an agent that I trust. And then they look over the paperwork and that be their like appointed agent.
Then at that point, that would be
Intermediary.
any intermediary
Because
situation.
you said about the flat fee, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what
Yeah,
that is?
yeah, then you can call me and say, hey Jamie, can you represent my buyer for a flat fee? Then we sign an intermediary, meaning you're the list agent, I'm the buyer's agent.
So that's just still a great opportunity to
It
get the
is.
benefits of both sides, but not have that liability.
Absolutely,
Right.
because then you're getting 6% of the commission and then kicking me back $1,000 or whatever, just to facilitate it.
Right. Okay.
Keep it in mind that Jamie still has to give me all her paperwork.
Yeah, so I'm still gonna have to go in there, yes.
So that, you want to, whatever fee you give the person who's reviewing and just helping, you want to compensate them because
Yeah.
it's still going to go under their name.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead.
No, go ahead.
But when I have the buyer's representation agreement and all of those, initial documents, like wire fraud, general information to buyers and sellers, when I have that information, but I don't have like a contract, right, with another home, then how would I start submitting those things into Brokerman? Or do I just keep it in my document?
You can submit it, and then what I do is I mark that file not ready. Not ready means to me there's no contract.
Right,
But you don't have an address to create.
exactly.
So
That's what I
hang on
mean.
to it, then once you go under contract, you get through the option period, then upload.
You get through the option.
I typically do it after I do the option period, because if it bails out, they bail out,
You get all that work
then
done.
you did all that work uploading for nothing.
Can you put it in the, when you first move over your documents into like the unsorted folder? Can you leave them in there?
Absolutely. Yep.
Mhm.
That way they're broken.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, but you guys need to be, keeping your documents for 7 years in a cloud. So I use Dropbox for all mine, you can keep them, and I don't know how long Dotwood keeps them. But I always keep everything in a cloud-based folder, and I also keep every single bit of communication via email in an email folder with the address, 123 Main Street, underscore the last name, Gonzalez, or whatever it is, every single thing. Don't delete anything. This saves you in a lawsuit, promise, okay? And I'm talking about even if they signed a document through DocuSign, I put that DocuSign in that 123 Main Street file. Okay, super important.
Yes, ma'am.
So on the, when you fill out a contract, there's a part where you put in the seller representing just seller or buyer representing just buyer. There's a part that says like representing like both
Oh.
though. So how is that illegal if it's on there that we can represent both?
It's not.
So say I have a listing and I get a buyer that is listing my sister and I want to represent her and she fills out everything, the buyer rep, all of that stuff. Do I still have to assign that or can I just do
You
that?
can then fill out the representation agreement. Can you pull that back up?
Yeah. The representation is what?
It's confusing, I know. It's confusing. So that's
So it's your listing. Yeah,
representing both sides.
You can't.
you're not representing both sides.
Can you
That's illegal.
Can you explain dual agency?
So then you can't represent.
Versus,
Dual
So you can do a
agency
double-ended
means
deal?
that I'm the listing agent, dual agency, I'm the listing agent, and a buyer comes along unrepresented, and I say, I'm representing you, and I'm representing the seller. That is illegal in the state of Texas. That's dual agency, okay? Intermediary is when Riley and I are doing it together. She's representing buyer, I'm seller, we're intermediary, we're the same company. This representation disclosure, that's what Yvette's gonna get signed for her client. She's
So you'll-
representing the listing,
You'll have to choose.
yeah.
And to be honest with you, like you already had the listing and even though she's your sister, you can get a trusted agent or just let her know like, I can only help you with factual
Yeah.
information. And that really puts you in a pickle if she doesn't have an agent, a separate agent to be able to negotiate with you, just because of the relationship.
But that would put her as her own, representing herself, and she would have to provide her own contract.
No, that's why we say facilitate. So if there's only one agent and you represent the seller, let's just say, you can facilitate it like, hey, here's the contract. So I did that one time. The buyer came, didn't have an agent. My fiduciary duty was to my seller. So I sure did write up that contract and made it to the best interest of my seller. The buyer paid for title, the buyer paid for everything under the sun, and the seller didn't. And if they wanted to sign it, you know, I walked them through it. This is what it is. And if they signed it, then that's not on me. I gave you the information in black and white on a piece of paper. So that's their choice. And, you know, and then but I will say, I did give them an option to say, hey, I have other agents that I work with that are happy to assist you. So that way you feel like you're being advised properly. But they didn't want to because they wanted a kickback from the 6% that I was getting. And that wasn't going to happen. So, that, I mean, again, you know, it's, they don't want to, you can't force them, but you don't represent them and you only give them factual information.
So how'd you close that deal?
Yeah, what do you call that deal?
Unrepresented.
At that time, this form has been out for like 2 years,
Yeah.
2 or 3 years. My deal, I did about 5 years ago. So this wasn't out. But at that time, it was just me representing the seller and the buyer was on their own.
And what I typically did in that instance is drew up an amendment and special provisions, and I would put it there in the amendment of special provisions. Okay, but in this instance, you're only gonna use this form or intermediary form, no other forms.
And that's why Trek came out with this form,
Yes.
for that particular reason.
And I wish every agent in Next Gen was here to hear this. This is
We need to
super
have a
important.
training on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We need like a deep dive training.
Oh, 100%. I've had so many, I'm telling
I'm
y'all,
taking my notes. We need a deep dive.
because I've had it's about 3 to 4 agents a week, I kid y'all not, that I'm talking to on the phone about what you're saying and what you're putting in brokerment is illegal. Like, don't give me a buyer's rep and a listing agreement. Like, don't do that. Like, you
Because
know.
there's so many different people, okay, that have gone through different phases of real estate and were trained differently.
Right.
Unless you are just really on top of the latest, the greatest, what you're supposed to do,
Right.
this, then
You don't
it's a
know.
slippery
Yeah,
slope.
very. Yeah, definitely. So, and then I went to go look at the contract to what you're saying, buyer only as buyer's agent, seller as listing broker's sub-agent. That's different. That's quote me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong, that's when, I'll give you an example, someone in Next Gen went to go host your open house, right? They're technically acting as a sub-agent because they're still assisting on the seller side. Comes in a buyer, they don't want to be represented, but you showed them the home, you're a sub-agent, right? It's a very slippery slope. Definitely want to make them your client as a buyer, you know. And then the other side, the option is seller only. And then this is another thing. If it is intermediary, you both go on the same side, on the listing side. And you check the box that says seller and buyer as intermediary, right? And so all that information goes right here. There's nobody going to be on this side. Okay?
So, just before we move on, keep beating a dead horse.
Go for it.
You're gonna represent, okay, you're not representing, it's a work, okay, that's the problem, it's a work.
Yes.
Representing is a work. Because you represent your seller, okay? The buyer has no agent. So we say representing because we're doing the whole deal,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
It's-
That's where the problem lies. Basically, it's just not, those good old days are over, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Alright.
Because it used to be an intermediary without appointments, right? When it was just you, but it would still be intermediary.
It was intermediary means both agents are from Next Gen.
Right. You're never gonna have without appointments on intermediary. It's always gonna be with appointments,
And that's
or
for
intermediary.
everyone, like in the.
Yeah, remember, me and Riley, just remember that discussion. List, buy, same brokerage, intermediary,
Okay.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Intermediary means the agent that is taking over the buyer side is a next gen agent, so we don't have to, do we have to put that agent there or just leave myself there? We have to put that agent there?
Yeah, that agent will go up
Yes.
here.
The listing agent's here and then the selling agent's right
Down.
there.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. This is great conversation. It's good.
Have
Keep
you been like
asking.
this for like the last
Oh, yeah.
year? Okay.
For the last year?
When I was younger, it was like without and then with appointments.
For a long time.
No, so like, just remember, intermediary, 2 agents.
Wait, yeah, I know that now, but I guess what I learned, and I don't know if maybe I'm wrong, but if it was without appointment, then you would have to step away and not give the seller any advice or the buyer any advice. Like they had, maybe I'm just making this up, but it's just what I remember.
Yeah.
It was like, it was called intermediary without just making it up. Maybe, I don't know, I just grew for like.
Girl, you just made that up.
But yeah.
Over, and then you represent both sides, like Leslie or Julia.
I was gonna say, because I have heard of that, and I know what you're talking about.
Okay, because I'm like, because it's from the school, it's from the
It's-
school,
yeah, it
and
would
like,
be if, like-
yes, school, and then in real life
Yeah.
it's different, right? So,
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, so you just want to remember that key word
facility,
when facilitate.
yeah, but now.
When
it
you
makes
use
sense.
represent, then you're talking about the one client side that you represent. And then if anybody else, you're helping anybody else, then you're facilitating. And I mean, the contracts state on there that for agent use, and you're an agent, and you're part of the contract, so, or the deal, so you're allowed to present those to the other side.
I have one more question.
Go for it, yes.
So when I tell the other person that I'm not representing them, I'm just helping them to facilitate the transaction,
Yes.
right? And I'm facilitating, when it gets to closing, do I still get paid my 6%?
Yes.
So when I have to facilitate everything, I just pretty much tell them what to do,
So
whatever.
remember, on the listing agreement, section
Yeah.
5A,
Pull that up because people get this wrong all the time. My
Oh my
agent yesterday did this, guys. When
Put
you're doing a
3%.
listing agreement, make sure you put 6% and not 3%.
Oh my goodness.
You cuckoo birds. You're literally like stealing from the seller if you put 3% on that listing agreement and then you collect 6%. It's 6%.
oh wait, this is a lease.
Okay, and leases, same thing, leases, 100%, don't put 50%, one of my agents did it yesterday, he put 50%, I'm like, do you wanna get paid or not? He's like, yeah. Okay, 100%, honey, 100.
Now keep in mind, there's a few things with that. There are some sellers that are pretty savvy, right? And they're like, oh, well, they don't have an agent.
Right.
So I only want to give you 3%. I mean, essentially, if you put 6% and they signed it, that no matter what, that 6% is coming out, right? This second blank, number 2, I've had agents that I assist. They'll put on there 4.5% if there's no other agent.
And I do that a lot.
And then that's even more enticing to the seller.
Yeah.
Like,
You put 6% still and then check and that in there?
I mean, you can.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing those 3 new construction right now. And since I'm doing 3 new construction and we're doing more in the future, I'm giving him a discount of 1%. So I'm putting in here, in my instance, 5%, and then I'll check box 2 and say, if buyer comes unrepresented, I will have them sign a representation disclosure agreement, and then I will give him further discount, whatever that is. Okay, so you can check both. Okay, but just be careful.
So what do I submit on BrokerMan if I'm facilitating for the buyer? What do we just submit?
just the representation disclosure.
Okay, and.
Because they have to sign that, acknowledging like, that you told them like, hey, I don't represent you, I represent the seller. And then that's what you'll submit.
All right.
And I mean, in all of my years, I think I've done this 3 times. Only 3 times. So this is like a lot of minutia. Just be careful. Call me.
Because it's interesting, usually when I hear agents, they're getting sued, it's actually for like the smallest deal.
Yeah.
For the, like, it's not even worth it. And it's not worth your license. Like, you guys, this is what you guys live off of. So you want to make sure you're crossing all your T's and dotting every I. And if you ever have a question, that's what we're here for. Like I said, I'm really quick on text.
Me
If
too.
not, send an email, make a call. You know, one of us is always available to be able to answer.
Yeah,
Within
text
reason.
me. Text me, email me, text. Text is fastest if you want to answer.
I would say we're pretty much at the Q&A part, got 5 minutes, but like any other questions, even if it's a random, doesn't have to do with contracts or brokerment, like I will also advise that if for some reason, like, man, I don't get brokerment and it's, let's say, I don't even know if they have hours, I think they do, you can always ask brokerment. They're very
Yeah.
responsive.
The
And-
chat box down here.
Yeah, I love
use the
it.
online chat all the time. If you need help, someone will walk you through this.
I've even had them
Step by
send me
step.
videos because I'm
Yes.
like, look, I need you to show me. And so they'll make a video real quick and they'll send
Yeah.
it to me.
Use the help center as your friend.
The MLS page, the
Printout.
MLS page printout, is it compulsory for both or just the seller? Because I know, Julia said we have to have the seller sign the
The
MLS.
MLS.
So the reason for the MLS printout for a listing while it's active, I'm looking for the live date, expiration date, and the commissions. All that has to align with your listing agreement. Now, the expiration date has to be the same, but the live date you have within 5 days to get it live. So let's just say today is the 8th. You got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The 13th is the last day you can make it live. If for some reason photos didn't come in, the wall fell down, I don't know, and you need 2 more weeks, you make an amendment. And you need to put on that amendment, listing will go live on X date.
So for the buyer side, because I just uploaded some documents for closing them, especially, I said that you asked for the MLS page on the buyer side as well. Is that compulsory for the buyer or?
They don't need to sign it. Oh, let me retract. So for the listing, the seller needs to sign it because you want, God forbid, later on they're like, oh, the house only had 2 bathrooms and you put it had 3. Be like, well, I gave it to you to review and you signed off on it. Why didn't you tell me back then? You want that as backup, right? For the buy side, we're looking for the pending. The reason we're looking for the pending is because, again, we're looking for a commission. Once someone goes in there and changes that commission, there's no way of tracing that. So I would actually recommend printing the active, but we want the pending. We want the pending because, again, the commission, we want to see that you're the selling agent and that Next Gen is listed as your broker.
Right.
And it doesn't need to be signed by the buyer.
The biggest thing that I was getting kicked back for was my listing agreement was a different date from the online listing. That's the biggest thing, because we just get in a hurry, and we're like, oh, we'll just put it in. And you don't look at what your listing agreement said. The listing agreement needs to match HAR, okay?
But it could be within the 5 days.
It can be within the 5 days. Even, so,
Yeah, I
and
write it
even,
down
let's
in
talk
my
about coming soon. So coming soon, you can sit in coming soon for 2 weeks, right? And then go live with it. Just make sure that if you're in coming soon and you have a listing agreement, it matches. Okay?
Or it even has a second box on there. Right there. Section 6A 1B. Hey, I need 14 days. Reason could be making house ready, painting walls, taking pictures, whatever it is that you want. And then if I see that, then I'm like, okay, I count the days, guys. So like I go and I check dates and I count. And if it's within that, then I can't really say anything and I'll approve it, right? But that's if you know ahead of time. If you don't know ahead of time and it's an unforeseen reason you can't get it on for 5 days, definitely just do an amendment.
Do you have like a model tenant criteria for Next Gen, or no, if you have a listing that's released, sorry, going off topic?
Oh, no, it's okay. Not that I know of.
What was the question?
Can you ask one more time?
Say,
The,
speak louder,
model
Doug.
tenant, addenda for, if you have a listing release.
So like, do we
Model
have
tenant.
a, like, I guess, a checklist or a guide for a model tenant selection criteria that the landlord can use to give to the tenants?
So you want, okay, criteria for a tenant. Yeah, so that's a good question. So typically what I put in the MLS, I have a separate document, and you're supposed to put a separate document in there that says tenant criteria selection. The reason is housing administration, discrimination, there's a whole issue with all this stuff. So to protect yourself and your seller, I would put in there, I usually typically say, credit must be at or above 650, no evictions, no bankruptcies, last 2 months pay stubs, driver's license, and lease application for everyone over the age of 18. That's what I put in my tenant criteria. If I am allowing pets, I also put in there, pets allowed no more than 2 pets under the age of, or under the weight of 25 pounds, depending on what it is. So be very, very specific. And then if you're requiring a pet deposit and it's non-refundable, make sure you put in there $250 per pet, non-refundable. Those are kind of the things that I put in the listing. So I put it in 2 places, one in a PDF document and attachments with your flood disclosure already signed by the seller, so we know that that's done. 2, I put it in the agent comments. Okay, always put that stuff in the agent comments. It makes it easier for agents to see it right in front of you. That way, when an agent calls you and says, what's your criteria for 123 Main Street? I'm like, you obviously didn't read the MLS. Have a nice day. Goodbye. Bye.
So by chance, do we happen to have a Next Gen template we can use?
No,
So create your own.
create your own.
Gotcha.
And I can create one for you guys if that's something that you want. Would you guys be interested in that?
Yes.
Good question, thank you, Lauren.
And do we pay 3% to a sub-agent, or we don't?
I put 0.
Most like EXP, Keller Williams, all that, they don't allow sub-agency.
Yeah.
Right, what does?
So I typically would say no. That's something I'm gonna have to talk to Julie about.
Yeah.
It just muddies the water if you pay a sub-agent.
It does.
And the
I'd
sub,
rather do a referral.
and the sub-agent is there representing,
Me, the list agent. That's like, if I have a listing, 123 Main Street, I don't wanna do the open house, Riley goes and does the open house instead. She would be a sub-agent if a buyer walked in and said, I want to buy this house with you. So,
but isn't that why she's,
I'd rather her be an intermediary and represent them separate. Yeah.
And that's because she's part of your team-ish?
Yep.
But if she wasn't part of your team, and she was just like everybody else, they're just holding your
It's
open
still
house,
sub-agent.
then it's just regular agent, right? Okay.
Does it make sense? Kind of. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Make everybody's lives easier and just don't do it.
Okay, good.
Just be an intermediary. Any other questions? Now's the time.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. you
This was
guys, for
awesome,
coming
Gloria.
out.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you
Thank
guys.
you, thank you, thank you. Yes, 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 yes.